final check. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get started at 6:30, and we promised you we'd be very prompt in getting started, and we promise you we are going to conclude promptly at 8:30. So we're going to get as much in as we can by now at 8:30 the next 2 hours, so it's going to move by very quickly. But I want to begin by acknowledging our elected officials that are here, the people I have the privilege of working with every day, the Commission Chairman, Randy Fairbanks, the Vice Chair, Sabrina Smedman, your representative, Jim Fields, and Commissioner Joe Graham from the Commission. Give them a good warm welcome. We got your state representative, Patsy Hazelwood's here with us tonight. Patsy. Your school board representative, Kathy Lennon. And from the town of Signal Mountain, the council, Amy Speak. Where did you go to speak? In the back. Thank you for joining us. Are there any other elected officials? Where is Bill? The mayor of the fine township of Walden, Bill Trohanis. Thank you for being with us, Mayor. Anyone else that I've missed? I don't want to miss anybody, right? Joe Wingate, where is it, Joe? School board member Joe Wingate. I still looking for. There he is. Thank you for being here as well, Joe. And I want to extend a real thank you to Todd Stinson, the principal here, for the hospitality of allowing us to be here tonight, and thank you for what you do each and every day. And before I do step aside, and I will, trust me, just a few minutes, I want to say to any faculty member here, past or present, or any administrator here from any of the schools in Hamilton County, but specifically here on Signal Mountain, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I think, and I know the commission shares this, and the school board as well, thank you for what you get up and do each and every day. Absolutely. I will say, for full disclosure, I'm married to a former school teacher, so I feel your pain, the ones that are married to the school teachers. I know how much of a commitment and dedication they put into it each and every day. We just think we have tough jobs. Teachers truly do. So I want to start off by just saying to you that why we're here, to give you a brief explanation, and I do mean extremely brief, as to why we're having this community meeting here today. The reason is really very simple. You had the town of Signal Mountain had began some discussions, as we're all aware of, about forming their own school district. So, as you can imagine, this circulated pretty quickly throughout all of Hamilton County. And as a result of that, I received numerous phone calls and numerous emails from the people that, not only from the town of Signal Mountain, but from the township of Walden, and specifically the unincorporated area, wanting to know why county government wasn't getting more involved. And said, well, you know, when the timing was right and we had the facts, that we would come forward and do a community meeting to only do and to remain as neutral as we are, and to be able to bring forth a panel. And we have a distinguished group of people with us tonight that are going to be on this panel, that are going to answer questions that have been submitted via email from all over Hamilton County, but primarily from the area of Signal Mountain. So, again, I just want to reinforce the fact that we're here tonight at the request of the community, to do just basically a fact-finding and fact discussion about what this would look like if Signal Mountain were to have their own school district. Now, I've got the distinct pleasure and privilege of introducing to you. If you hadn't met him, he's a fine gentleman I've had the opportunity to meet with on numerous times. And I want to tell you, I've said this a number of times, he's the right guy at the right time. He wants to say a few words with you. Please welcome Dr. Brian Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, County, for putting this on to get the facts out there. My name is Brian Johnson, and I'm elated to be superintendent here. I just want to introduce a few members of our team that are here. Mr. Ben Coulter, who does everything data and technology. Mr. Justin Robertson, Dr. Justin Robertson, who works in curriculum instruction, Assistant Superintendent Lee McDade is here as well, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, and our Finance Director, my gosh, my name is going blank, Christy Jordan. And so we are elated to be able to share with you just the facts, as Mayor Coppinger said. We're very proud of Signal Mountain and the accomplishments of the schools here and the work that's being done under the principals and the great teachers that are here. And so we look forward to continuing to come alongside you all and support you in every single way. So we look forward to answering as many questions as possible within the 2-hour time frame. And I've got to trek back down the mountain, and so we will figure that out. But I look forward, thank you for having us, and look forward to the time together this afternoon, this evening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. And I did, in my eagerness to get started on time and introduce people, I didn't say who I am, but I'm Hamilton County Mayor Jim Coppinger. It's a privilege to be with you today, and a privilege to be able to serve Hamilton County as your mayor. Now, I'm going to tell you, we have a really distinguished panel, as I mentioned, and I'm going to go through them really quickly so that we can really get into the moderator, and I'll tell you some of her background. But I'm going to start over here from your right to left is our Deputy Finance of Hamilton County Government, Lee Browner. We have Al Kaiser, who is Chief Financial Officer for Hamilton County Government. These gentlemen do a wonderful job, unbelievable job. Christy Jordan, who's been announced, she is the Chief Financial Officer for the Hamilton County Department of Education. Ruben Taylor is the attorney for Hamilton County General Government. Scott Bennett is the attorney for the Hamilton County Department of Education. You know Deputy Superintendent Lee McDade. He's a member of your community. And of course you met Superintendent Brian Johnson. And now I'm going to introduce to you, okay, Senator Watson has made his appearance. Where is Senator Watson? Senator Bo Watson? In the back. Thank you for being here, Senator Watson. Again, somebody's really committed to education. What we've asked to do, we've asked Lauren Lowe. Lauren Lowe is going to be the moderator tonight, and there's a good reason for that. Lauren Lowe is works for a PFM. PFM is Public Finance Management. She's a consultant for Hamilton County General Government. She's a consultant for the City of Chattanooga. And which you'll find interesting, she's a consultant for Shelby County government, as well as 4 of the 6 cities, the municipalities that form their own school districts. So she brings about a wealth of knowledge with that. But again, you can tell Lauren has to be neutral because she represents what? Shelby County and the municipalities there. She represents Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and it's because PFM is the most reputable finance company in the United States, in our opinion. We have people kind of filtering in, but I think they would know me by now that I start on time. Commissioner Greg Martin has just joined us as well. Thank you for being here. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Lauren Lowe. We are very, very fortunate that she was willing to come here today from Memphis, their home office, to moderate this for us, and she's been collecting all of the emails that have been sent to Lauren, and so she's going to have an opportunity to explain to you how the process is going to work. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me in your beautiful community. I have to say it is the first time on the mountain, and it is a beautiful community I'm very proud of. I want to talk, sorry about that. I want to talk to you a bit about logistics and what we're going to go through tonight. As the mayor introduced, we have representatives from a financial perspective, from a legal perspective, and then from a policy perspective. And in reviewing the questions that came in electronically, that tends to be the 3 major focal points for this panel to address the specific questions that were raised. We are going to start with the questions that were submitted electronically. There's many, many of them. I hope we're able to make our way through them. There was also an opportunity to submit questions as you walked into the door. If we have time, we will then turn our attention to those questions. I do expect many of them are duplicative of what we have already received electronically. I am going to try to move quickly through the questions and keep our panelists moving along and make sure there is a clear, concise answer that is delivered to this group, given the large group that we have today. If we do not cover your question by way of the electronic submission, or if it was a written question, the county mayor's office has offered up that you may email his office at countymayor@hamiltontn.gov any follow-up question that was not covered tonight. With that, I think we're going to move over and start working through the questions, but in the air of full disclosure, we do have multiple panelists that are residents of this area. I believe Al Kaiser and Scott Bennett are also, they're both residents of the area. And I think also we mentioned Lee McDade was also a resident of the area. I think Scott also, you have children in the school district in this area. So with that, we're going to go through the questions. I will moderate the questions they will ask. There will not be questions that are interjected throughout the process unless they're running. So with that, hold it closer like that. Is that better? Okay. Hey, now you can't interject that if you cannot hear me. All right. I'm supposed to have handheld. I mean, that clip on. So here we go. These are in no particular order as we roll through them. For years, parents have tried to have a later start time for the middle high school. Is this an issue HCDE would consider? And I know that my panelists have a mic, so please bear with them as they pass it amongst themselves.
Thank you, Lauren. I'll try to answer that one. So when this school started several years ago, before it became a school, we surveyed parents, and I'm old enough to remember this because there's not many people left that do remember this, and it was overwhelming that parents wanted it started early for sports and other activities, and I think coaches probably pushed that a little bit, and the parents kind of sided with the coach. However, we are looking at doing some pilot to some schools, to some high schools that will start later, and Signal Mountain would certainly fall in one of those pilot areas.
Thank you. Also, I would make a note that as I read these questions, these are verbatim for what was received, so they're not references that I have made or anyone on the panel has made. It was said that Mayor Howley has said that since Signal Mountain and Walden paid $10 million towards building the middle high school, that means the county will give the school buildings to the town because it's the community in which the building resides, implying the building is worth $10 million. I'm going to pause and let the panelists speak to that piece before I move into further questions.
Well, I guess I'll start off with that. I think one of the assumptions embedded in that question is that the town of Signal Mountain, or really any town, would have a legal claim to the County Board of Education's buildings. And state law is very specific that county school buildings are titled in the name of the County Board of Education. There's a specific statute on that point. And by the same token, the statutes that allow a municipality to start their own school district spell out that the municipality can buy buildings, can lease buildings, can build buildings, but there's nothing in there that says that they take title to existing county buildings. There's certainly nothing in there that says that they can condemn or lay claim to those buildings. And so one of the basic principles of legal construction that Ruben and I deal with is local governmental entities can only do those things that the General Assembly says that they can do. And so since the General Assembly didn't say that county government, that the county school board loses title to those buildings, then the assumption is that they don't, that in fact those buildings remain the property of the school system. Now, taking that a step further, even if you could make an argument that law could be changed to transfer title, that wouldn't apply to this building, to Signal Mountain Middle High School, because Signal Mountain Middle High School was actually built as part of an interlocal agreement between county government, the school board, the town of Signal Mountain, and the town of Walden. There was a four-way agreement, and the gist of it was that the town of Signal Mountain would contribute $7.7 million, Walden would contribute 2.3, and the county would contribute the rest. And I think that's like $33 million. And the arrangement was very specific. And if you read it now, some 14 years later, it sounds a little cumbersome, but the way it reads is that the Board of Education has the responsibility to own, to staff, to furnish, to operate, but it starts with own, the building for the life of the facility. And the reason that it was worded that way, for the life of the facility, is because if you go back to 2004, there was a lot of debate about whether this building should even be built. And sitting here now, it's hard for us to remember this, but again, go back. Interesting exercise. Go back to the Chattanooga, pull up the Chattanooga and do a search for 2004 for any article on Signal Mountain High School. And you will see that there was a ton of opposition, even on this mountain, for the building of this building. And there were people who said straight up that because some 60% of high school students went to private school, that there wouldn't be enough students up here to keep this building up and running. Now, glad to say that they were wrong, right? But so one of the concerns was, if there's not a high enough census, what happens? Does the board end up closing the building? And so as part of this agreement, we put in a commitment that the Hamilton County Board of Education would always own the building and would always have to operate it the same way it operates any other building, any other high school within Hamilton County. Now, likewise, off the mountain, there were some people who were very concerned that if this building were built, that eventually the town of Signal Mountain would try to start its own school district and lay claim to this building. Because even then, that was something that was being talked about. And so, recognizing that we had to get everybody on the same page for this, we entered into this interlocal agreement with the specific purpose of saying who's going to own it, who's going to run it. And the Hamilton County Board of Education has the contractual obligation to own and operate this building as long as there's one child who lives in this mountain who wants to come here. And the general rule in the state of Tennessee is that even if the General Assembly changes the law, you cannot impair, you cannot change retroactively an existing contract. And so what that means is even if circumstances were to change, the law were to change and Nolan and Thrasher would go to the town of Signal Mountain, which I don't think would happen. But if it were, this building would remain owned by the Hamilton County Board of Education. Taking it further, could the Hamilton County Board of Education, under some circumstances, choose to transfer buildings it owns? Sure, absolutely. Except for this one. Because again, that interlocal agreement bound that Board of Education back in 2005 when it signed it, and it binds future boards of education. It binds county government, and it binds future county governments, and it binds the two towns. It would take all four entities to agree to change that interlocal agreement. Now, I've taken up way too much time. I know that there are a bunch of people who can say, well, things were done differently in Shelby County. And I'll say, that's right. Things were done differently in Shelby County because that is an entirely different set of circumstances. It's way too complicated to go into right now, but what it drills down to is, even in Shelby County, those municipalities had to pay funds to get buildings. And the agreement said that the title to those buildings would revert back to the County Board of Ed if the payments were missed. And so follow me here. If the title automatically goes over, then why would those municipalities have had to pay a red cent? It's because the title didn't go over. Those municipalities the County Board of Ed chose to sell the buildings it wasn't going to use to those municipalities, but not even all of them. One of the points that I think people overlook is that the city of Germantown decided to operate its own school system. The city of Germantown did not get title to 3 buildings it really wanted. The Germantown High School, Germantown Middle School, Germantown Elementary School. Again, the city of Germantown has its own school system. Germantown High, Germantown Middle, Germantown Elementary are all operated by the Shelby County Board of Education because the Shelby County Board of Education didn't want to sell them. And so this question right here, I think, sort of presupposes a false assumption that Signal Mountain would have a claim to this. I think there's also an assumption in here based upon the way I read it, the bond debt, and I'm going to let finance speak to that. But the general rule of thumb is you can't sell any building, even if you wanted to. You can't sell any building if there's any kind of bond debt that's attached to it, which is what makes the Shelby County situation very, very cumbersome and hard to compare to. I won't even get into that. I'm going to see if Val wants to comment.
Yes, please proceed with anything related to the finance aspect. I may also have you keep the mic as the next questions may be pertaining to you.
Okay, as Scott said, the total cost of the building of Signal Mountain Middle High School was $43 million, of which, of course, Signal Mountain and Walden contributed $10 million. So we financed $33 million of that back in 05 or 06, and the balance on that is $14.7 million, and it will be paid off in 2023. Also, I think there was a question about the maintenance on Signal Mountain Middle High, and we were given these numbers by the Board of Education. The custodial maintenance, utilities, and trash run about $678,000 a year on just Signal Mountain Middle High.
Okay, thank you. I was asked to acknowledge some other elected officials who have joined us this evening, Judge Barry Steelman, as well as Mayor John Roberts. So thank you for joining us. Now, I think if you all can keep the mic, I think the next few questions may also be pertaining to you and finances. We're going to move to now, what about Nolan? Even though the recent expansion was $7 million, how much county tax dollars have been spent in the building and maintaining it over the years?
Okay, I guess that's me again. The Nolan building, that's true, it cost, when we built it in approximately 1997, it was $6.8 million. There was an addition added in 2014 that was another 4.9. So the total cost of that building is 11.8 million, and there's 4.8 million still owe on it, and it will be paid off in 2030. The $4.9 million. The maintenance on that building, again, the custodial, the maintenance, utilities, and trash is approximately $260,000.
Thank you. What about Thrasher? It is my understanding that building has been paid off. Is it different because it's in the town limits, or did county tax dollars also pay for its maintenance?
Thrasher, sure, it was built in 1961, I believe. Since then, we have done a lot of maintenance on it. We put in $734,000 on that. Of course, the debt on that is paid off. That money was paid for by the Board of Education's operating capital, I believe. And again, the maintenance and utilities and trash on that is approximately $208,000.
Thank you. What effect would the proposed separation have on school choice for students living in the town of Signal Mountain and Walden? Would such students be eligible to enroll in other Hamilton County schools like magnet or STEM schools, etc.? Would such students be given lower priority than students living elsewhere in Hamilton County, making it unlikely that town of Signal Mountain Walden students would be accepted if there was a wait list?
The policy of the Hamilton County Board of Education right now is that if you are in the LEA, if you're in the zone of the local education agency, which is border to border, you can attend magnet schools based upon the competitive enrollment process. The board also allows, can you not hear me? I'm sorry, is this better? I don't want to do feedback, I'm kind of notorious on that. So, again, current policy is that if people from outside the system want to attend a school in Hamilton County, they pay tuition. Now, if Signal had its own system, students within Signal are still citizens of Hamilton County, so they would not have to pay tuition to go to a county school. However, the policy of Hamilton County would be that you can only attend a school where there's room. And if we're talking about a school of choice, for example, STEM, Normal Park, CSAS, CSLA, go through the list, you're talking about a school of choice, then you would in fact be bumped to the bottom of the list because you would essentially be a student who by law is served by a different school system. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So the difference between someone from Signal Mountain and someone from Bradley County is that someone from Bradley County could go to any school where there's room but would have to pay tuition. A student from Signal Mountain could go to any school where there's room, wouldn't have to pay tuition, But yeah, as the question suggests, they would be bumped to the bottom of the list, and Hamilton County residents would have first dibs at the magnet schools.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge School Board Member Carissa Jones, who's also joined us this evening. Thank you for your attendance. Next question. I have one big question that has not been sufficiently answered by anyone yet. What is the actual purpose of the split? What is it that this school is not providing or doing well that will be provided by a separate school district? How can anyone be certain that the availability of a separate district will be higher than what is already, the quality, of a separate district will be higher than what is already available?
Yeah, I don't know that we can answer that. So I think for us, we focus on how we can support every single student in the system, and obviously today we focus on students at Signal Mountain, and so I don't know if I can put into words. I don't know if I can put into words. I see you. I hear you. Put into words why there'd be a need for a split. Our goal for students of Signal Mountain, just like schools across the system, is to provide every single opportunity for them to be successful. When you look at Signal Mountain, we offer IB programs, we offer AP, dual enrollment. So just like we offer across the system, we look at offering those opportunities here. And that would continue to be and shall continue to be our focus moving forward.
Thank you. The next question is a legal question. Does the town of Signal Mountain meet all the legal requirements to even have a referendum vote?
The answer is, and this isn't legal speak, it depends. The state law says that if the town if the town has the requisite number of students, then it can send the question to referendum. And so really the first judgment is up to the town council, whether they have the 1,500 students that would be sufficient to start the process. And the reason that I say depends is that the census right now of students who attend Hamilton County schools who reside within the town of Signal Mountain is 1,510 students. But that's inclusive of some 70 students. It's inclusive of all of the students who live in the town of Signal Mountain who attend magnet schools off the mountain. 65. So that 1,510 students includes people who presently do not go to Thrasher, Nolan, or Signal. And so for the town to include those, they would have to assume that those students would for some reason come back into Hamilton County schools rather than going to a private school. I've already said they probably would have a hard time staying in magnet schools because they would effectively be in a different school system. And well, anyway, so there's that. Now, so what happens if they don't guess right? If they don't have the requisite number of students and it goes to referendum, let's suppose that the referendum passes. Well, remember, there's actually a two-step process for starting a school district. The first one is the people by referendum have to say, yeah, we want to do that. Then there's an election for a completely different town board of education, which currently doesn't exist. We don't even know who would run. And I'll say as an aside that there's been a whole lot of assumption about what the town's school system might do down the road. But here's the thing, even the sitting town council cannot bind the yet unelected town school board, if there were to be one. In our own experience, local boards of education and the local governing body don't always agree. Fair point? Don't always agree. And so it's really presumptuous to assume that the town council knows what the local board might do. But let's say that they do. So the local board of education starts the process of planning, and maybe they can use some of the work from the viability committee, and they're moving forward. Here's the thing, before the state board of education gives permission to do the startup, before the commissioner says, yep, you can start school, the commissioner's office has to go through and decide that you've met all of the criteria. And if at that point you don't have 1,500 students, then you can't start up. And that would be a little embarrassing. And there's some debate about whether the commissioner could waive that 1,500 student requirement. The weight of the authority among the attorneys who do this, and there are a handful of us around the state, is that 1,500 student requirement is established by the State Board of Education, and the commissioner probably lacks the authority to waive it. So if you don't have 1,500 kids come start of school, you're probably going to have a problem.
Thank you. Will all current teachers and staff at Signal Mountain Schools be guaranteed a slot with HCDE off the mountain if the split occurs?
And the answer to that is no. If they have tenure, they'd be guaranteed an interview, but they would not necessarily be guaranteed a job under the new state laws for teachers and employment.
Lee, is that different? So help me understand. So if there was a Signal Mountain School District formed, would they be guaranteed a spot in that particular case?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Lauren, if I may,
Sure.
expound upon that. If I understood your question to Lee, the first question is, if there's a split, would those teachers have a job in Hamilton County? And Lee's right, no, there's no guarantee. They could get an interview if they have tenure, but that's it. Your second question, as I understood it, was, well, what about Signal Mountain? Would those teachers be guaranteed a job in Signal Mountain?
Right.
And really the answer there, they're not guaranteed, but making it even more complicated, is impossible even to project what that would look like. Because the state board rule requires that a new district submit a personnel plan that, first of all, reflects the policies of the newly elected Board of Education. So again, we get to the point, we don't know what that board would do. I'm sorry, but thank you for letting me know, but frequently I'm accused of being too loud. So anyway, my wife's up there and she says, yeah, he is. So the long answer made short is simply this. Part of the personnel plan is that this district, this hypothetical district, would have to have the same amount of experience, total years of experience on the average, as the parent district, as Hamilton County would. And that's kind of hard to guarantee for a couple of reasons, because right now I don't know what the average level of experience is in the schools on Signal. Maybe the viability committee's already looked at that, but hypothetically, if you have a bunch of young teachers at Nolan, well, statistically, since you have to have that average amount of experience, there's no way to guarantee that the new district could keep those teachers. And then you run into issues dealing with health insurance and how you fund that, because you're talking about a smaller group. And at least initially, the new system would have to preserve the same kind of contractual benefits that Hamilton County teachers currently enjoy. And so what you create there is an actuarial nightmare that literally changes in real time, depending upon which teachers decide to take a job and which teachers decide not to take a job. So there's no guarantee, and not only that, it's impossible to guess what that looks like until you get right on the cusp of an actual separation.
Thank you. If the town of Signal Mountain creates their own school district, would Hamilton County be able to provide the current level of educational curriculum, services, and staffing for Hamilton County schools on the mountain, particularly IB, gifted, special education services? What would be the enrollment needed to maintain HCDE school services?
So the answer is yes, we would try to maintain the current level of services up here. And we may have to do open enrollment or some other creative things to do that, because IB is an expensive program, as most of you know. Signal Mountain currently has IB, and certainly that's something that this community and this school is very proud of, and we would certainly try to keep that up here. So, so the answer is yes, short answer.
And in terms of what would the enrollment need to be to maintain a school here, I think I heard a reference of any student that would like to stay within the county, you have an obligation to educate.
So I think there's a little over 250 students from Walden and about 400 in the unincorporated areas. And then, you know, Signal Mountain did their own school district and Walden didn't go with them and they didn't get the unincorporated kids. I think you're pretty close to being there as far as enrollment goes. But again, we certainly could do open enrollment or maybe even a magnet status if we needed to.
Thank you. What are the potential scenarios for what will happen to unincorporated students on Signal Mountain who stay with HCDE? Will they continue to be served at 3 schools, but be bused off the mountain, and if so, where?
I think as alluded to a minute ago, at least with regard to the high school, the local board, the Hamilton County Board of Education has no option but to keep operating it for the benefit of the students of Walden and for the benefit of the students in the unincorporated areas, regardless of what the town of Signal Mountain does. There are certainly some scenarios in which the Hamilton County Board of Education might look at whether it needs to operate 2 elementary schools, but that's something that the board would have to decide down the road. Both boards are titled in the name of, both schools are titled in the name of the board. There's been no conversation about that, and to my knowledge, no one affiliated with the Viability Committee has approached the board to ask under what circumstances the board would be willing to sell out of the elementary schools. Certainly, if the board has the contractual obligation to maintain the high school and middle school, and it does, it would necessarily follow that they would go ahead and maintain at least one of the elementary schools. So in terms of where would they be bused? Well, nowhere, because they've already invested in schools that would continue to be part of the county system committed to serving those kids.
Thank you. I think the next question is very similar in nature. If Signal Mountain forms an independent district and a town of Signal Mountain family prefers to stay with HCDE schools, will their children still be allowed to attend HCDE schools? If so, what HCD school would those children attend?
That's a similar question, but it's different because Lee mentioned something there about if to keep the enrollment, if to keep the IB status, this school needed to become a magnet school, then again, it falls under the same magnet school rules that other Hamilton County magnet schools would be. And so students who live in Signal Mountain would be part of a different school system, and that school system would have the obligation to educate them. So oddly, if Signal Mountain High School became a magnet school in order to maintain its IB status, you see where I'm going with this. Kids from Signal Mountain would not have the preference to get in. Now, if Signal were just an open enrollment school, if it were non-magnet, that wouldn't be the case. Students residing within the town could still come here, and that would be easy.
Yeah, and one last thing, Lauren, I'm pretty sure that we would keep the IB status for the school, certainly if we kept this school. And there's a rule in IB, I believe it says it's a 23-mile radius, there can't be another IB school. So this would be the only IB school on this side of the county.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a follow-up question to that in just a moment, so that's a good segue. Are there ways to address the concerns raised by the town of Signal Mountain that have led to the Signal Mountain Viability Committee appointment as such? Later school times, inadequate funding of arts and theater, and inequalities for funding of athletic transportation that is offered at other schools in Hamilton County, but not at the high school, middle school, winter weather issues that impact the mountain, but not other areas of Hamilton County.
So yes, the answer is yes to being able to address those concerns. I've had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Holly first time, I guess a couple of months ago, and one of the areas, and I'll just share this at a very high level. You know, one of the realities of us being here probably is some type of communication breakdown at some level. And as odd and as complicated as that sounds, it's really that simple. And so, again, I go back to what our job is systemically. Our job is to understand the needs of every single community and to respond to those needs as intentionally as we can and as much as our budget allows us to. And so when you bring concerns such as the arts, and we've heard that across the district, one of the things we've got to look at across the system is how do we provide more opportunities for students to be engaged in the arts. I know Dr. McDade spoke earlier to transportation. So, you know, one of the realities is we're a 3-tier bus school system, 3 drops, and you're trying to compact all that in. It creates some challenges, but one of the things we recognize and realize is that that's an area that's important to the community. And so we've got to have a conversation with our board about ways in which we might look innovatively at our transportation and ways in which we might be able to support that. And so all the concerns that are laid out here within this question are areas that we definitely continue to have dialogue with this community about, the same as we would in Hickson, the same as we would at Red Bank, the same as we do in Ottawa, really across the system, to make sure that we address the needs as best we possibly can here at Signal Mountain.
Is there any way for residents of unincorporated Hamilton County to participate in a referendum regarding the proposed separation of Signal Mountain and HCDE and the proposed impacts to our schools?
No.
Is the Hamilton County concerned about the potential transfer of some of the county's best teachers away from Signal Mountain and the impact this might have on our children's education during this upheaval?
Well, certainly, transfers are an issue every year, and of course, teachers up here are eligible for transfers every year all the way to June 1st, which is the cutoff date. And I've got friends who teach up here, and husbands who have wives that teach up here. I even had a wife that taught up here up until a couple of years ago. So I hear a lot of that, and certainly that is a concern for us. But it's also those teachers' right. If they're worried about the future of their jobs, if they want to transfer, that is their right, and we can't stop them. But it is a concern, and it's something that we will look at addressing, the best way we can.
How much, this is more of I think a finance question, but I'll read it all the way. How much does HCDE spend on the IB program each year, including for IB teacher professional development? Is this the full expenditure required to maintain the program, or is the expense of IB shared with MEF, the Mountain Education Foundation?
HCDE spends about $100,000 a year. This past year we spent about $90,000, and that included the cost of licensure for both the middle school IB program and the high school IB program, which totaled over $21,000. Then the remainder of that, about $65,000 or so, was spent on professional development for the IB teachers and other IB-related expenses. HCDE does provide the cost of the IB program, but I do know that the Mountain Education Fund provides some support to enhance those programs.
Thank you. Lee, this is a follow-up to the point you made earlier. This comment says, I understand that the IB rules prohibit 2 IB programs within 23 miles of each other. If Signal Mountain forms its own district, does HCDE plan to keep the IB program or let Signal Mountain School District have it?
We would plan to keep it.
Dr. Johnson, I'm going to pose sort of a general comment or question to you. There was a decent amount of questions related to the arts and STEM programs. It sounds like that's obviously an area that you've been focused on. I just open it up for you to kind of add any comments or commentary related to those aspects of either particular in this community or other areas of the community.
So I'll share those 2 areas are focused systemically for us. Those 2 areas in particular, we did non-listening sessions and also have implemented a transition team that's helping us through it. And those 2 areas came up consistently across the county. The arts, more opportunity for the arts for students, and then STEM. And the reality with STEM, and I'll speak very broadly to it, is, and I've shared this number before, that in the next 10 years, it's projected in the state of Tennessee that there will be 42,000 jobs with a median salary of $62,000 a year. And so as a school system that's focused on ensuring that every student is post-secondary ready, we have an obligation to make sure that we're aligning students to those opportunities with intentionality. And so I think we're doing a lot of pretty innovative things across the system. But those two areas in particular are definitely areas that we'll be zeroed in and focused on to see how we can work to address it. I've talked to our board some and talked to our academic leaders quite a bit about step one is really organizing what we have, and we're looking at some ways pretty quickly to be able to really organize the arts opportunities for our students across the system. So those are two areas that we've identified that we've heard as a common theme across the system.
Why can't HCDE form many school boards that include more local representatives of any one area that meets locally to hear parent, teacher, community concerns and gets their input before coming to a consensus that's then forwarded to a bigger district board by a local rep that rotates on the bigger board?
They handed me the microphone. The simple answer, reason why they handed me the microphone is that state law says you've got one school board. But what I usually try to advise clients to do is to think, okay, how do we get to it to yes? And so one of the things that Hamilton County has always done historically is there's the Superintendent's Advisory Council that includes parents. There's a very active, robust PTA in virtually every part of the county. And so while we can't have quote-unquote many school boards with many elected folks, there's certainly a mechanism in place where the school system can reach out to local communities and tap into what the local sentiment may be. I know Kathy Lennon, our school board rep, is deeply committed to finding out what's going on in our community. I know that Dr. Johnson has been running all over the county finding out what's going on. There's no reason that, even though we couldn't have elected quote-unquote many boards up here, there's no reason that using existing structures, we cannot tap more effectively into local opinion. And certainly, when my wife when our kids were at Nolan, we've been residents of the town of Signal Mountain for a long time. But when my wife was at Nolan, she was there constantly doing teacher appreciation. And just because she was there, I see Dr. Harvard, he was like, yep. Even after my kids left, she was still there, right? So there are mechanisms whereby parents who are concerned with what's going on in schools can make their voices heard. I think maybe we need to make those a little bit more formalized, or we can make them more formalized. So the answer to the question is you can't do it that way, but let's see how we can do it.
And I'll add one more thing, and we've got several board members here tonight. I'll pick on Kathy Lennon, who's the board member for this area. So the previous question about the arts, there's no bigger proponent of the arts than Kathy Lennon. So in my 2 months being here, I've heard about the importance. I heard about it from her, then it was reaffirmed throughout the community. So I encourage you, obviously, to use, as Scott said, the mechanisms that you have. And I will share this, one of the things we'll be continuing to work with principals on are ways in which we systematically engage the community. And so there's definitely some opportunity to put some really formalized structures in place that give our community really across the system an opportunity to give input. And that's something that we really thrive off of. We're looking at the possibility here in the next month or so of deploying a survey that will go to students and parents, teachers, administrators, and our community at large to get feedback on things that are going well and what we need to do to continue to improve as a system. And so we will be putting mechanisms and structures in place to gain that input from the larger community. And so, again, we'll be working with principals as well on what those structures might look like in their buildings so that systemically we have a way in which to engage parents and parents know how to plug in.
I don't think Signal Mountain residents will stop helping other schools. Sorry, that feed sounds bad. Let me start over. I don't think Signal Mountain residents will stop helping other schools even if voters support a separate school district. So tell me as a parent, why should I want my child or children to stay with HCDE instead of a local school district?
And I see the PS there, you hadn't decided yet. So here's kind of bottom line I'll share. we're going to continue to have a laser focus on preparing every student. And that's as simple as I can put it. We are going to push every single student to their maximum potential. And so, you know, the maximum looks different for every single student. The ceiling looks different for every single student. And it's our job to push every single student beyond that which they think they can achieve. And so, you know, here we offer IB programs here. You know, there's AP Dual, there's other opportunities. The arts will be a focus. We're going to continue that and rev that up even a notch, because we have a goal of being the fastest improving district in the state of Tennessee. And we understand that when you look at each individual student, we have an obligation to move every single student. And so I know some of the numbers that were thrown out there as far as what we invest, $100,000, whatever it is, in IB programs. We'll continue that. We'll continue to find ways, not just here, but again, in every school across the system. We're going to continue to find ways to give students access to the opportunities that they need to put them on the track to be successful. So that's why you should keep your students with HCD.
Thank you. It was said that Mayor Halley continues to share information related to stats from the state that show that over 50% of our students are testing below grade level for math and science. Is this true for Signal Mountain students?
So let me kind of frame that question a little bit. The reality is the state did two things that everybody needs to be really aware of. The first thing the state did a few years ago was they changed the standards. Okay, so the standards are much more rigorous than they were several years ago. The second thing that the state did was the state changed the assessment, and the assessment is much more aligned to not sort of strictly aligned to the ACT, but it's a much more rigorous assessment that's more predictive of how a student will perform. There's more of a correlation in that performance and how students will perform on Tennessee, on the ACT. So what you'll see is not necessarily specific to Signal Mountain, but you'll see across the state of Tennessee numbers that are, the proficiency numbers came out, you'll see numbers that look lower. You know, very few districts across the state have students that have moved beyond 50% of mastery or on track in regards to any of the areas on the state end of course assessment. And so that doesn't necessarily feel good because we always know we're striving to move towards 100. But Hamilton County is not in isolation with that. Now what our focus is going to be on is outperforming the state. That will be our focus. We've been talking to our team about that. We do not want to be behind the state in any single area, and we should never be behind the state. We're going to challenge ourselves to always have our proficiency rates beyond the state. So it is true for Signal Mountain that in areas there are below 50%, but I want to couple that by saying that that's not always the reality. And I'll read the specific numbers so that you're aware. Signal Mountain High School was 34.99% of their students in math were proficient or advanced or mastered or on track, and that's up from 26.53%, which is roughly 8%. In the state was at 21.5%, and so Signal Mountain outperformed the state by about 13 percentage points. In science, it was roughly 75%, 74.92% in 2017, which was up from 67%. And in 2016, the state was at 51%. So the students here on the mountain outperformed the state by 23%. And so I think when you look specifically at those two areas, we know where we are. We know in social studies and RLA, we still have work to do. In those two areas, but the students here traditionally have performed very well, which I think needs to be part of the conversation. Students have done well on Signal Mountain, and so our job is to continue to move students forward on Signal Mountain as it is everywhere else across the system.
Thank you. The next question is a legal question. Can Hamilton County give up their responsibility to educate unincorporated county students through an interlocal agreement?
Can Hamilton County give up its responsibility to educate? No. By statute, that's the responsibility of the County Board of Education, and that's that. and I want to underscore, even if the town of Signal Mountain were to start its own district, even if the town of Signal Mountain were to have open enrollment and invite in folks from the town of Walden, even if they were to invite in folks from the unincorporated area and not charge them $1 worth of tuition, those folks would still have the right to go to Hamilton County schools, and Hamilton County would still have the statutory obligation to educate them.
If Signal Mountain succeeds from HCDE, how do you anticipate the loss of its 4 schools, tax revenues, and students will affect Hamilton County's economic viability and the HCDE in general? Sorry, that was a finance question. I should have.
The economic viability of Hamilton County schools will not be impacted. Our revenue will be decreased, but we will still have to provide the same level of services. And regardless of whether we operate 78 schools or 75 schools, we will still need the same level of administrative support. I'm talking about human resources, finance, curriculum, and instruction. So our overhead costs will not be decreased. What will happen is there will be an additional layer of overhead needed by the new school system.
Thank you. How much does the county anticipate charging Signal Mountain for the buildings and the land of Thrasher, Nolan, and the middle high school?
Well, currently those aren't for sale, so I don't know.
All right. A couple of questions are going to get a little bit more specific, and I think some of them we'll do our best to answer. Some of them we may to defer to if there was another school board created. They actually would be the party to answer these questions, but we'll do our best, try to give you some context and make sure your time's well spent. What would happen to accrued sick leave for teachers, healthcare benefits, how long are they guaranteed, retirement specifics? How many teachers are guaranteed and for how long? So I presume this question is in the context of a school district, a special school district, a municipal school district was formed.
Right, and so a lot of this is going to be driven by whatever policies the new school board, the hypothetical Board of Education might create. But they're bound by the 4 corners of state law. And there's a particular statute that says that when there's a change in government, whether it's because of an abolition of a system, like happened when Chattanooga went out of business, or the merger of systems, or the creation of a new system. Anytime there's a change in government, I can't win for losing. Whenever there's a change in government, what ends up happening is the new system that employs the teachers has got to guarantee that the quote, rights and privileges of the teachers do not change. Now, what that means is if you're tenured in Hamilton County, you're tenured in a new system. That means that if you are at a certain salary level, your salary level stays the same. Your TCRS retirement stays the same. Where you get into that sticky wicket is when you're talking about other contractual benefits. And the reason that I mentioned this earlier is because it really is a moving target. As most teachers, and I see several in the audience, as most teachers know, one of the hooks that Hamilton County has had for years for its teachers is the comparatively rich benefit package. By most measurements, Hamilton County has the richest employment benefit package in the entire state. Any teacher who would go to the new district would be guaranteed to have those rights remain in place for the life of any existing contract. So if the Hamilton County Board of Education entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Hamilton County Education Association, saying that for the next 3 years, the benefits are going to be X, a new district would take those teachers subject to that contract. So the rights are protected. Now, the question is actually, it's a really insightful question, because the question is for how long? And it's for the limit of the contract. Now, certain things are forever. Tenure is forever unless you lose it per statute. TCRS, I'm sorry, I'm speaking in code. Retirement benefits, those are forever. Sick leave benefits, those are in code, those are forever. But the health insurance piece is not. And at the expiration of the existing contract that Hamilton County has, that means that the new board would be free to change it however it wanted to. And one of the things that's in the proposed budget is an assumption that its insurance costs would be the same as Hamilton County's. And that's actually a dangerous assumption because Hamilton County is self-insured with millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of capital set aside to fund health insurance costs. And yes, there's an annual contribution, but that would be very, very difficult for a small district to do. And by small, I mean one even half the size of what Hamilton County does. Most districts in the state are on the state insurance plan. Hamilton County is one of 20 that's not. So it's very, very, very expensive to be on a self-insured plan like Hamilton County. And so for 3 years, the new district would, or for whatever period of time that the contract existed, the new district would have to maintain benefits. But you do not see in the budget a placeholder for that. There's an assumption that the costs are going to be exactly the same. And maybe there's an actuarial study out there that says that they can provide the same level of benefits as Hamilton County can for its 6,500 employees, but that would be extremely unusual when most other districts in the state can't do that. So, how long would it last? At the most 3 years. After that, you would necessarily expect to see a change in benefits.
Scott, I'm going to ask you to hold the mic just for a minute because I want to make sure this is correct. If a teacher currently holds tenure and the school decides to change district, is it even legal to take away the status away from a teacher? I think I heard you say no.
Well, the question there is if a school decides to say, schools don't get to decide. But if a teacher is an employee of the Hamilton County Department of Education and the Signal Mountain Board of Education chose to extend an offer of hire, then the same rights and privileges and benefits would carry over, so tenure would carry over.
Okay, thank you. This is, I think, more of a financial question, but we'll see if we can answer it. Is refurnishing empty buildings part of the viability committee budget?
I reviewed the preliminary budget and I saw $24,000 in there for furnishings for a new central office, but I saw nothing in there for refurnishing the existing school buildings.
Thank you. This is a request to clarify the committee's rehiring policy or probation policy. I'm not sure if that's something that this group can do. I just want to throw it out there if anybody wants to speak. The viability committee, excuse me. Okay, so it seems that request should go directly to the viability committee. There was actually a fair amount of questions related to the viability committee's plans, specific to jobs and the like. I mean, that's obviously, I think the reference I heard earlier from Scott is those are plans and ideas, but those would actually default to a future school board should one be formed and elected. Is that a fair statement, Scott?
That's right, and I assume that a newly elected board would have to rely heavily upon what the viability committee's already done. But again, a lot of these discussions are in real time, and the state commissioner's office certainly might have questions, might ask for additional information, might push back on some things. Because again, there's a list of like 6 things that you've got to have. Personnel plan, a facilities plan. There's some very specific things that you've got to put in for the commissioner to ask questions about, because it's ultimately the commissioner's responsibility to green light the start of the school system. So I mean, again, it's possible that any municipality could pass a referendum. They could elect a board, the board could pull together a plan, but if the commissioner says, no, I don't think you're ready, you don't get to start. So you have a sitting board, but it's not an activated school system. And so the thing is, depending upon how detailed the viability committee report is, the new board is going to have more or less work to do. And so that's why I was saying it's a little dangerous to assume, based upon a report, what a yet-to-be-elected board might eventually decide.
Thank you. If Signal Mountain decided to split, who is going to fix any tech issues, maintenance, repair, etc.?
Lauren, that's going to be up to the new board and how they set up maintenance and facility issues with the new board and the new district.
Okay. This may be also a similar outcome, but let me ask it. If Signal Mountain were to split, could we look at a 4-day work week? Could we stay on the same calendar schedule? I'm in favor of that for me, but.
I think everybody would be in favor of that. Dr. Johnson and I may come to work for Signal Mountain if that happened. By law, I know at one time I did a lot of research on this when Hampton County was going through a tough financial time back in the 2000s or late 1990s. And state law prohibited. Now that may have changed since then because I certainly am not up to date on it, but I think it may be state law would prohibit it.
Okay, thank you. If we split, what happens to insurance policies? Can a spouse be added back to original plan? Not sure.
But, and this goes back a couple of years back to save money. At one time, Hampton, if you were an employee of Hampton County, you could have your whole family on the insurance. A couple of years back, we stopped that and said if your spouse is an employee and they have insurance at their workplace, you cannot be on our insurance. And I think that's what this is addressing, and that's certainly something that the new board would have to address if they started their own district.
Okay, thank you. Have the members of the committee spoken with representatives of HCDE about their concerns?
Well, we've certainly been involved with several meetings, and we've asked about, why, and really hadn't gotten a good answer to that, and I think they're still doing a lot of studying, and I don't think they, are ready to come forward with something with those answers.
If the purpose of the separation is financial, why not ask for complete transparency of HCDE funds and put the county on notification that students on Signal deserve their fair share? Just because some Signal residents can afford more doesn't mean and should not mean that they are left. Well, I'm going to stop because that's a statement, so let's talk about financial transparency, and I will allow those who are involved in the county school budget to speak to that.
Regarding transparency, the school system budget is available to anyone who wants it, and I believe most of it is on the HCDE website. And regarding the Signal Mountain receiving their fair share, I did look into the BEP allotment, and we currently provide far more staffing to the Signal Mountain schools than is allocated by the state BEP funding formula. So each school does have some say in how that staffing is going to be deployed, but we are providing much more than the state funding formula allocates.
So BEP is the Better Education Program.
Basic education.
Basic education. And it's coming from the state down to the county and then allocated.
That's how the state funds each school system.
Thank you. Make sure we all know our acronyms. All right. So what is the benefit to our children if Signal Mountain breaks away from HCDE? Who takes the mic?
What is the benefit if you break away? There's absolutely no benefit if you break away. Well, if it was that easy, I would have said that much earlier. This meeting's over. I go back to what Chrissy said, and kind of connect what was said earlier. The reality is this. Our job is to provide every student with the opportunity, and it's not necessarily about the specific numbers. We fund it so let me bust this myth before go out here saying they fund Signal Mountain above the BEP. Every school is funded above the BEP. Okay? Do you understand that?
In Hamilton County?
I said what?
What did you said? I'm sorry, can you restate
I said
that?
every school is funded above the BEP in Hamilton County because the BEP formula is a tight formula, so 25 to 1 or 20 to 1, depending on the grade level, 30 to 1, depending on the grade level. So students in schools aren't built in tight packages, and so you can't just have the exact number of students. Your average has to be at a number, and I won't get so convoluted until your average has to be at a number depending on the grade level. And so every school is funded above. Now, here's the reality. If you have an IB program that you have in place, right, you usually have to do some things to make sure that that IB program is able to be supported. And so I use IB as an example because I know she put the number out there that we spend in training and things of that nature, but I think if you look deeper at that student-to-teacher ratio in that class, you're going to see some things that HCD provides that may not be provided. And so the reality is, in other schools, it may be a CTE program that we provide. And so Signal Mountain students get what we would want to provide, what we try to provide at every single school across the system based on their individual needs, so there would be no benefit.
I'm going to go a little bit off script because, well, I'm the school system attorney and I represent lots of districts around the state. I'm also a parent. And I've got 3 kids, one who graduated from here, one who'll finish up this year, and one who's a junior. And I don't think my wife will mind my saying this, but one of the reasons that we moved here was because our son is profoundly autistic. And we wanted to be part of a program that was being piloted by the Hamilton County Board of Education, a very unique program that the Hamilton County Board of Education was going to pilot at Nolan. And because we heard about this program, we sold our little house in Hickson, where we were really happy. We were a mile from our church, where we still go. But we wanted to come up here and be part of a program because the Board of Education was investing in doing something different for how it educates kids with autism. And we've been very pleased with the investment that the school system has made in Nolan, now at Signal Mountain, and more particularly in our son. So as a parent, what's the reason for leaving? I would agree with Dr. Johnson, there's no reason. Flip it, what's the reason to stay? You're part of a larger family with resources that can be brought to bear to address almost any problem. A smaller district does not have the resources to address the special needs that so many of our kids have. And so as a parent of a child with special needs, that's my perspective. And no one has heard my personal view on this, and I'm now going to shut up.
I think we may need to pass the mic down to Christy. The next question is, how realistic is the budget the viability committee, has made?
I reviewed the preliminary budget, and it was about 15 pages of budget and 15 pages of work papers. So it included a lot of things, but there were quite a few things that I felt may have been left out. There are a lot of, besides just the regular unknowns, there are many things that the school system provides and pays for on a school-wide level, not a school-by-school level. For example, we pay the bill for the internet, almost $500,000, but that covers 78 schools. We don't break it out school by school. We pay for background checks and the TIABEL software and a lot of different softwares, particularly in curriculum and instruction, that we pay for on a system-wide basis. It's software licenses, and it's not broken out by school. So I believe that there are quite a few things that may have not been included in this budget. There's really no way to project to project some of these things. And the other thing, after listening to this afternoon, I'm not certain that they included the revenue basis as all of the students that are currently enrolled. And after listening to some of these things tonight, that basis for the revenue may have been just a little bit too high. So,
Thank you.
If I may just expound, one of the things that is worth pointing out there is the basis was what, 24 students? That presupposes that the folks who live in Walden want to opt out of the interlocal agreement. It also presupposes that the folks in Hamilton County want to opt out of the interlocal agreement. It presupposes that the Board of Education wants to opt out of the interlocal agreement. If you take away that assumption, what you're left with is maybe 1,500 kids. And so, plus whatever they could get from open enrollment, bearing in mind that they wouldn't get this building. And so the problem that you run into is you've got a budget that's built around some 900 students and their corresponding state funding that there's no guarantee that they're going to get. And so you start with that assumption and you say, you know, that assumption's not valid. You start to see some problems with the way the budget works forward. You also have some problems based on health insurance, as I pointed out earlier. The budget presupposes the exact same costs for health insurance that the Hamilton County Board of Education currently pays. And again, that's not really a safe assumption because the Board of Education is self-insured. Again, out of 141 districts in the state, we're one of about 20 that's self-insured. And so what that means is that number's going to look different. They're going to be part of a different group. Probably once the MOU expires, they're going to have to look at going on the state plan, and so that number's going to change. So that's not to say that they couldn't put a budget together. It's not to say that if the town doesn't choose to do this, they couldn't make it happen. But the budget that they currently have right now is probably going to need some work before school were to open.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question this group can ask, but I'll ask it. What is the likelihood that all materials, technology, and insurance benefits would remain the same in the new district?
So in the new district,
Yes, sir.
you know, as long as the MOU, the current MOU for Hamilton County is in place, insurance could not change. When that MOU expires, it can change as well as salaries.
Oh, okay, good to know. The next question was, what is the projected salary change for teachers? I think that's also an unknown with the exception of...
It's unknown. They can never lower their salary,
Right.
but they can't, you know, they certainly would go in under what they're currently being paid.
Okay, thank you. How, if at all, would a school nurse position or supervisor role change if a separate school district was formed?
That's a great question. Currently in Hamilton County, of our 78 schools, I think we have like 71 nurses, so they're not in every school, but they're in almost every school, and some schools have multiple nurses due to circumstances of students. So we have a supervisor they can go to for answers. In a small district, probably the superintendent would be who they would have to go to. That would be probably their immediate supervisor.
Thank you. There were several questions pertaining to the cost of classrooms, the maintenance of the classrooms, the cost to maintain the building if there was a special school district formed. To be honest, I think that I'm not going to run through each one because they are going to be a very similar answer, and those should be directed to, obviously, a future school board that would be elected should a separate school district be formed. So I'm going to move on to questions that I think are helpful and valuable for this group to hear and to hear a direct response to. So this question is, how can schools become more adaptive to the needs of a population? When I read it, thought I had to think about it for a minute, and I realized I think it means the specific needs or the desires of a certain area or community. So I think the question is more directed to how can HCDE speak to those desires of a community?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is what we're trying to do now, what what tried to do over the years, what's been implemented here. And I feel like we've talked about IB to nausea, but IB isn't in every school in our system. Y'all understand that, right? And so the reality is that's a specific need for this building, and not so much, maybe not a need that we don't need to look at expanding, but it is, we know it's a specific need for this building. And so, I think we have a responsibility to always be adaptive or to be nimble and to provide schools and communities what they need in order to be successful. And I'll speak to career technical education. We have some CTE courses here that we don't have at Hickson High School. And Hickson High School has some offerings that we don't offer here. And so our job is to look at a couple of things. One is to look at industry and to look at where their opportunities are, because our job is to make students post-secondary ready. And then two, to look at, their desires, student desires connected to those opportunities. And we should be doing those two things in concert. And so that should always be our focus and will always be our focus for students and school communities. We'll work with principals and we'll say, what does your school need? What is it that you're offering that we might want to shift? And then how can we work together collaboratively to try to staff those roles to support the students?
Dr. Johnson, I'm about to test your nimbleness here. We're going to switch to the cards that were submitted on the fly, meaning I haven't read them, so there may be some redundancies. I'm going to try to be respectful of that. I'm also, if it seems that we've already covered, I'm not going to waste the panel's time, and certainly not yours. I know many people may have missed dinner coming here tonight. So, nimbleness. Can we change the start time if we separate? So I think you should think about this in the context of separate and NHCDE as you answer this question. This individual thinks it's too early.
Yes, if you separate, it's up to the viability committee, that board that's established. Obviously, we answered earlier that if as a part of HCDE's work, we'll be studying that and looking at potential of piloting it. There are a lot of factors that go into that. I spoke to the 3-tier busing that we have right now, and so we're having conversation about ways in which we might bring forth to the board some opportunities to look at things maybe a little bit differently around that. So we are looking at it as a system because we've heard that from the community, but as far as the creation or development of a new district, it would be up to that board.
Thank you. I think we've touched on this, but it's a reoccurring theme. This person wants to know what will happen to the unincorporated areas, particularly when the mountain gets crowded. There is a potential development of 200+ housing that is referenced here. So unincorporated area and those children are the question. Meaning, what will happen if, I presume if a special school district, a municipal school district was to be formed, what happens to the children who live in the unincorporated areas and how they will be educated?
Well, I guess, as Lee said, they'd come here. They would graduate in due course of time from this high school.
Thank you. Will the IB program be protected if you were to switch? So I think this means if it were to be a split off to a municipal school district, will the IB program be protected?
The IB program would remain at this school.
Thank
It
you.
would be protected.
What if a student wants or needs to go to a different school? I presume this is if a special school district were to be formed. I think we've covered this, but I think it's helpful to re-emphasize if it's a resident within Signal Mountain and outside of Signal Mountain, please.
So if it's a resident of Signal Mountain and they have their own school district, if they wanted to go to one of our magnet schools or schools of choice, they'd be put on the list pending availability of room. If they wanted to go to a regular school and rooms available, it'd be just like they were an Allen County student, except they wouldn't have to pay, they wouldn't be allowed to attend.
Thank you. If we have a problem, a disagreement, can we go to HCDE for help or mediation? Where will we go if the schools separate? come to take it.
Y'all can't come to us. I get in trouble with the mic. No, it'd be up to, we got enough challenges. No, but we wouldn't touch that, just to be very honest. So we want to support, we want to see every single student in Hamilton County be successful. We have a laser focus on the 43, 600, or 700 that we have, and that's where our commitment has to be. Right now, Signal Mountain is a part of that, so our commitment has to be there. And so, we would allow the board and the superintendent of that established system to deal with those issues.
So let me make sure that I understand that we kind of fully answered the question. Right now, as a community that's part of HCDE, they have access to your school board and your individuals to come to with those problems. If there was a special school district to be formed, the then go-to person would be that newly elected school board body. Is that a fair reference?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. What would be the impact on the rest of Hamilton County schools if Signal Mountain leaves the district? How would they manage with the loss of funds? I think we did cover this a bit earlier, but certainly, do you have anything you want to add? Or
I think we would lose some revenue, but we would also, of course, lose maybe cafeteria staff and things like that. So I think it probably wouldn't be a wash. We would lose some revenue, but we would open school next year.
Thank you. I'm not sure this group can answer, but I'm going to ask, will unincorporated Hamilton County be included in a new school district? We are in the school district, but not in the town of Signal Mountain.
As I understand the question, would that be part of the district? No. Could a Signal Mountain Board of Education extend enrollment opportunities to those folks? Yes, on the same basis as it would anyone else outside the district.
Thank you. I think this is the exact same question, but the only difference is it's an individual that is outside, it's in the unincorporated area. They do expand it to say, what does the move to this district, how does it impact our zone? I presume the school zone, but also home values. I'm not sure if this pays. Home values, the impact if they're in the unincorporated area. I'm not sure if that's anything that any of us can answer. But
I think I wouldn't ask Greg Martin, he's a realtor, but
no pressure.
I think home values up here are pretty much maintain their status. I don't see those dropping any or fluctuating a whole lot.
Sure. This is an interesting question because it's outside of the county. We live in Sequatchie County and have two kids that go to Nolan on a hardship. How will that change, I presume, if there was a special or a municipal school district formed?
And that's going to be up to the school district.
And again, that question presupposes that no one would go with the new school district. Again, the viability committee, to my knowledge, has not approached the board and asked under what circumstances might the Board of Education sell either of the elementary schools. And again, since the board's got to maintain the middle high school, it makes only sense that they would maintain one of the elementary schools. So in the case of those folks, nothing happens. I presume that if they're under hardship and they're out of county, probably they are children of someone who works there, but maybe not. So those folks would continue to be Hamilton County School System employees. Their kids could still participate, could still come in under the hardship. It's kind of hard to answer some of these questions that presuppose that the schools transfer ownership, because again, we haven't been approached about that. And I haven't gotten the read from any of the board that they're willing to consider that without having been asked.
Thank you. This is also a question related to unincorporated children. Kids that are in the unincorporated area and there was a special school district formed, will they have to pay a fee to attend the special or municipal school district like a private school fee?
I don't think it's a private school fee. When we looked at the budget, I think it's like a $250 fee, I believe is what it was one time
And
per year.
that would be determined based on that school board's.
That school board would have to do that. I mean, it's in the budget at $250, but the board would have to approve that.
Thank you.
And Lauren, just to expound upon that, the state law gives public schools the right to charge tuition to anyone who resides outside of the boundary of that district. But that's fixed. And so what you look at is you look at the total amount of money that the school system spends per capita. And you divide the total amount per capita. And if you're talking about someone who's outside the county or who's within the county, you subtract what the county spends on those students per capita. And that difference is the maximum amount that the town system could charge. So if the town spends, say, $1,500 more per student per year than the county does, then they can charge up to that $1,500. It's not the sky's the limit. It's actually fixed on the basis of how much more they would spend.
Thank you. I don't believe we can answer this question, but I will ask it of the panel. What do we want to accomplish with a move to an independent or a municipal school district? Specifically, what happens in 4 to 5 years down the road? I think we're comfortable moving on, given that's a specific question for that school board. Previous Superintendent Rick Smith toured the county asking for a tax increase to help fund schools. Why now, 2 to 3 years later, has the mayor and the commission suddenly increased property taxes when we've known these funds were needed for years? No guess who gets that one.
I was kind of enjoying the whole conversation. You know, I mean, I know all of you here and throughout this county. I mean, we've always said that a tax increase should be the absolute last resort. And it was. And again, you know, this is something we've been looking at for several years. And I know there's been some criticism about why wasn't included in June, but much to the credit of the commission, there were a couple of things that came about after that. Some unexpected costs. And one of the things none of us like to talk about with new issues with jails and inmates, which was some of the driving force. But more importantly was the opportunity to open up for some economic development and to grow this county by the addition of a sewage treatment plant on the northeast part of the county. So what will that mean to us? Home builders and realtors, Travis and Greg, tell us that between now and 2022, there needs to be about 10,000 houses built in Hampton County. You might not know, but since the last census, this county's grown by a population of 17,000. A lot of that is in the county. City of Chattanooga, I'll tell you most of it's in Chattanooga, but most of it's all in Hamilton County, right? So with the opportunities, if you look, and yes, the commission, and certainly myself, have realized for quite some time the issues about the schools and the needs for the schools, but the reason for the tax increase was not just for, you know, any one of those items that I just mentioned, but it became very apparent to myself, to the staff, and more importantly to the commission that made that really tough decision yesterday that we needed to go ahead to move this county forward. In order to do that, it was going to require an enhancement of revenues. Now, many of you may not know, but the only two ways that county government can gain revenues is either through sales tax, which in the unincorporated area, there's only $3 million a year that comes in on sales tax, or property tax. It's generally property tax. There are fees, there's additional money that comes from state and federal dollars in the way of grants, but it's not something that really these guys that have to balance these budgets can count on. Having said that, I'll take one step further. We have lived off of the growth in this county for the last several years, which has averaged about 2.5, 2.6%. What we anticipate with the new sewage treatment plant is the opportunity to continue to grow county. in a sense that we can minimize in the future the need for additional revenue. You know, hits, that's the subliminal message for additional taxes, right? We all get it. But again, that is our hope, that's our wish. It certainly was the wish of the commission was that, you know, we're at a point, I didn't mention this, but the fact that we're a AAA rated by the 3 top rating agencies in the country, which is Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's, allows us the opportunity right now to be able to borrow money more cheaply. And so if we waited years from now, the economy may change. It may cost more money to borrow money, which we borrow less and be able to do less. So, you know, a combination of a lot of different issues made this the right time to do that. And again, I would emphasize to you, there was no one that disliked that more than myself, other than the commissioners, right? No one really wanted to raise your taxes. We realized the impact on the elderly. We realized the impact on small business, which 93% of our county is small businesses. And I say that with, you know, with a lot of mixed emotions. We're excited that we're going to get to do the things we're doing, and we're disappointed that it's going to impact some people negatively. But much to the credit of the county commission, they also at the same time did pass a tax relief for seniors, veterans, and also people with disabilities. So again, I hope you bear with us and know and trust. It's kind of a weird thing to say for a politician to say trust, right? I see a bunch of politicians here, but I hope that you trust that it was, in fact, an absolute last resort. If not, we were going to be stagnant in this county, and we wouldn't be able to make the progress we're going to make with building new schools. Which, oh, by the way, we're not doing anything that we aren't required to do by law. It's county general government's responsibility to build school buildings. It's county general government's responsibility to take care of the jail situation with the inmates. None of us like the jail situation, but again, you know, we put in a stopgap, and hopefully it's going to keep the Tennessee Corrections Institute or a federal judge from coming in, finding us on a daily basis, or saying to the commission and myself that you're going to build this jail, and by the way, we're going to tell you how to do it in the next few years. So I hope you bear with us and know that there was a lot of thought, a lot of hand-wringing, myself, the commission, and people that were involved before this decision was made. But I'm really excited that we are going to be able to invest in our schools. I will take this as an opportunity and advantage of you to say that between 62 and 65% of our overall budget, this year's budget is $691.5 million, and between 62 and 65% of that goes to education. We're really proud of that. Here in Hamilton County, we're very proud of that for public education, and that does not include the $138 million we've spent building new schools, making additions to schools like Nolan, or this $100 million that's going to be spent going forward. So I think it speaks volumes about the county's commitment to public education. I would take it one step further, and I'm going to be quiet, or I'm going to sound like an attorney. The other thing I want to say is the local dollars that goes into our public school system. I know we're in the top 3 to 5 in the contributions made in local dollars and in your tax dollars. I remind people, county government has no money, it's your money, but we fund on a local level. It used to be only second to Williamson County. We all know why Williamson County is the very wealthy county, and I don't believe, maybe Rutherford County may now, or maybe Davidson, I don't know, but we are in the top 3 of how we fund the dollars locally. And I don't want to say that because you're saying, well, then why don't we have more money? The state, our delegation, Representative Patsy Hazelwood and certainly Senator Watson's fought for us year after year about the BEP. We did get an additional $11 million to the budget last year, but the BEP formula does not work in our favor, and much to the credit of all of our delegation, has lobbied extremely hard with the state government to try to pass a 2.0, a BEP 2.0. The problem is some of us have found out, there'd probably be a huge lawsuit, and we'd probably end up with less than we have now. But I do want to applaud our representatives from the state and local levels that have fought and continue to fight, and all of us will, for more money for our public education.
Thank you, Mayor. Too bad we're not ending on that note, but we have a few more questions. I want everyone to be aware of time. We are about 20 minutes left. I feel certain we're going to be able to cover the last few questions. I appreciate everyone's patience. The next question is related to special education. So currently HCDE provides special ed at all levels. If Signal Mountain were to leave, will all of those same special education services be available? If not, are students eligible in HCDE? Still eligible, excuse me. So, I'm not sure.
I'll let Scott speak to the still eligible part, but I'll couple that with something else. I think the size of a system, so when you look at special education services and what we're able to provide as a pretty large school district, the reality is we do have resources that sometimes smaller districts don't have access to. And we're able to, and I'm not just saying this, it's just the reality, we're able to respond a lot of times more urgently to specific needs of students. And so I'll give for instance, if a student for some reason moved to Hamilton County and needed a one-to-one, we're probably positioned a lot better to be able to quickly deploy that resource to that student. I don't want to say a one-to-one to one-to-one aid because of their disability. We're positioned a little bit better to deploy that support to that student quicker than would be most times smaller systems. Now, any system any size has an obligation to provide the service for the student, but we're probably positioned a little bit better to be able to do that. As far as the legality piece, I'll turn
Touching on what Dr. Johnson said, he used the phrase one-to-one-to-one, and so people understand what that means. If the child's team, that's how we refer to it in special ed, if the child's team determines that a child needs someone who is assigned to work with him one-to-one, then that's what the child gets. That is an extraordinarily expensive benefit. The team, under state and federal law, is supposed to make decisions that are driven based upon the child's needs. But the reality of it is that the federal government, at least I think it was, well, the last number that I'm familiar with, funds only 18% of the special education costs. The balance of that is picked up by state and local governments. And so it's a little naive to say that some services aren't a function of what is available. Now, I say that, and I'm proud to say that Hamilton County and Knox County are the two counties in the state that really invest in some programs that are extraordinarily expensive. They have very specialized classrooms for children who have very specialized needs. Many other districts around the state have given those up simply because the cost associated with those are tremendous. And so having said that, the way I will answer, one of the first questions is would the child still receive the services? That's the first question I think that was asked. So if you have a child who is a student at, let's say one of the schools up here, and he has an IEP, an individual education program. Let's suppose that Signal starts its own district and has some school somewhere else. Maybe they refurbish the Signal Mountain Elementary School, and that's where they're going to have school. The child who would go there would have a still active IEP, because IEPs are good from year to year. But there would be that carryover. It would be as if the child was moving into a new district. And so the new district, which would be Signal Mountain Board of Ed, would have the obligation to provide the services outlined in that IEP. They would then call a meeting to discuss, as quickly as they could, to discuss what specific steps that they needed to do. And I'm jumping over a bunch of gobbledygook that you don't care about. But the short answer is, at least initially, the child's education plan would not change. Over time, though, you can expect to see local education policy is going to start to inform what that IEP looks like. And so then the next question would be, okay, what happens then? Well, state and federal law make the responsibility of educating children with disabilities the responsibility of that child's local education agency. So in the hypothetical, a child living in the town of Signal Mountain, the responsibility of implementing his special education plan would fall upon the Signal Mountain Board of Education, and it would be their responsibility.
Thank you. In the past, when Chattanooga operated a school system in Hamilton County, I'm sorry, I should have prefaced, this is a more financial question to my friends on the end. In the past, when Chattanooga operated a school system in Hamilton County issued bonds for construction, the city of Chattanooga received a portion of those funds. Would Signal Mountain receive such funds? If so, is there a time limit by which the funds need to be used, or can they bank them until other funds are available?
Lauren, you probably can answer that question better than I can, but yes, if we are required by law to, whenever we issue bonds, county is responsible for the school system, for the funding of the bonds for the school for the entire county. So therefore, we would have to give a portion of the bonds the bonds that we sell, the proceeds, to the Signal Mountain or any other school district, and we did that with Chattanooga, and it's based on the average daily attendance. As far as the spending of it, by federal law, we're required to spend our bond money in 3 years from the time we issue the debt. There are some other exceptions to that, and we can go in. I won't want to bore you with that, but yes, we do have to split it with another school district.
Sure, go ahead.
A caveat to that, though, is it doesn't follow that all school construction has to be funded through bonds. One of the quirks in Tennessee law is that if a county has multiple school systems within the county, they can set aside funding savings accounts, if you will, to fund future construction. And this is actually something that you don't see it in Hamilton County because we have one school system. And it's a relatively recent quirk in Tennessee law, but there was a case coming out of McMinn County where McMinn County decided, you know what, we anticipate we're going to have a huge amount of growth. We need to go ahead and save money. So they started squirreling away money for future school construction, school maintenance, school improvement. And so when those monies were spent, the city of Athens said, we want our cut for our kids. And McMinn County said no, because it's not a bond levy, it's not for current expenditures. This was a savings account. And it went through the court system, and the court said, no, you do not have to spend, or you do not have to apportion or share those monies that have been set aside for future expenditures. So while it's true that Signal, or really any LEA, any municipal system that might be created anywhere in the state, would share on current levies, it doesn't mean that that's how the county might choose to fund future building expenses. Again, I represent several school districts around the state, and one of my clients, a municipal school district, is dealing with this reality because there is no more new construction bonding coming its way.
Thank you. We have a few more questions that came in through the electronic submission late this afternoon. Since we have time, I do plan to cover those. Has Hamilton County Board of Education had an agreement with any other entity like a county or another school system to allow students from another county or school, for example, excuse me, I'm trying to read on this. For example, has Hamilton County Board of Education agreed with Sequatchie County Board of Education or Marion County Board of Education to allow citizens residing on Signal Mountain to attend Signal schools? If any agreement with this exists, can you please provide a copy?
The short answer to that is no, we do not have an agreement. We did at one time. That was stopped by the county commission probably 25 years ago. So no.
Thank you. Has Signal Mountain government or the Viability Committee approached the Hamilton County Board of Education or vice versa to work towards an agreement to allow unincorporated Hamilton County residents to attend schools within Signal Mountain's proposed new district? If so, when did this occur and what were the terms discussed?
The mayor and I, we've had general conversation, not necessarily to the specific level of what it would look like and how it would be. We've had, our conversation has been about what the issues are and trying to get to the core of what are the issues so that we can try to work to address them. And I think, as Dr. Madej said earlier, as time goes on, I'm sure the Viability Committee will make those issues even clearer, and we want to understand those so that we can respond to them in an expedient way.
Thank you. What is the likelihood Hamilton County Board of Education will enter into an agreement with the new Signal Mountain School District, if it is formed, to allow unincorporated Hamilton County residents to attend schools in the new district?
You know, certainly that would be up to our board. I don't want to speak for them, but certainly can't answer that without talking to the board, the entire board.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I think I've already answered that one. If Signal Mountain creates its own own school district, would HCDE use the middle school, high school for CSLA rather than replacing the deteriorating building? I don't know what CSLA is, so someone's got. I know. I hope everybody else knows.
I think Dr. Madej said earlier, we look at how to expand the usage of this building. Where CSLA is in relation to this, isn't, it isn't ideal. It wouldn't be an ideal location. So, we look at obviously maintaining the IB program here and looking at how we can provide opportunities for students right here.
Thank you. Given that we have a couple cards, I'm going to jump to these just because those likely are people who are here, and I'm not sure if these are in attendance or not. So, how long do you think it could take for a decision to be final regarding whether or not Signal will have its own district?
The short answer is the process is triggered by town council deciding to put it to referendum. Then it's a simple matter of how quickly a special election can be called, and the code provides that it could be a special election. It would have to be funded by the town. Then, subsequent to that, the town would have to elect a new Board of Education. And then, at that point, they put together a plan for the Commissioner of Education to review. The law provides that they cannot begin operating sooner than August 1st, following the Commissioner's approval. So, theoretically, if they have a flawless, bulletproof plan, they could present it and she could say, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic, stamp, and they could be up and running August 1st of next year if everything else is in order. But there are, again, if I remember correctly, I think there's 6 things that plan has to encompass. The personnel piece is one of them, the enrollment. So that would have to get firmed up. It wouldn't be a simple matter of, well, we think we might have this. You would actually have to have a firm number of what you're looking at. And I said this before, you have to have a facilities plan. And so those pieces together have got to be presented so that the commissioner knows that when she hits the green button and you go live, that it's going to be up and running and it's going to function as flawlessly as you can expect. So the answer is, it could be as quickly as August 1, but the practical answer is, it'll take as long as it takes until the commissioner is satisfied.
Thank you. If Signal formed its own district and many families then decided to attend private schools or home schools, what would that affect the viability of a new district?
Certainly it would affect it, and that's going to be certainly a school board decision up here if they form their own district on how they would address that.
Thank you. I will return to the last question that I had received. Isn't Hamilton County currently in need of a new school building to replace what is now CSLA, there again, a magnet school? Oh, there's my answer, thank you. Is currently Signal Mountain Middle High School not a likely candidate to fill this role, the second any theoretical new school district without any claim on this facility?
Well, certainly we're going to have students, children up here in Walden in the unincorporated area that we have our obligation to educate, and we would want to use this building to do that.
And I don't think that can be stressed strongly enough. I think that there's an assumption in that question that if Signal Mountain were to start its own district, this building would be a wasteland. And that's not going to happen because, again, you're talking about hundreds of kids who live in the unincorporated area, and this board has an obligation to serve them. And likewise, you know, I was posed a question by someone affiliated with the town of Walden a few weeks ago. What does Walden need to do to protect its investment in the $2.3 million that it put into this building? And my answer was, you did it when you signed the interlocal agreement. When your people signed the interlocal agreement, you guaranteed that your kids would always have a right to come here. So I really don't want the fact that the panel's entertained the question about CSLA to be misconstrued by anybody on the mountain, that people on the mountain couldn't come here, or people outside the town of Signal Mountain couldn't come here, because they absolutely could come here, and in fact there's an obligation to allow them to come here.
Thank you. That concludes all the questions that I've received and that we have gone through either electronically or written. I will say that, as we mentioned when we started this session, that if you had a question that was not fully addressed or you would like to follow up specifically, the County Mayor's office has offered up countymayor@hamiltontn.gov. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to him for him to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and give Lauren a hand. Okay, again, there's a few things I want to say before we depart tonight. Again, a special thank you to Commissioner Fields and to the school board representative here, Kathy Lennon, for helping make this possible. They did a lot of the legwork here. And to the panel, thank you to each and every one of them, and you deserve some applause as well. It's not easy walking in not knowing how people are going to feel, right? Let me just say this and leave. First of all, what a well-behaved group of people and on such a contentious type of subject that's going on. But at the end of the day, I know you're here because you care about public education, just like all of us that are sitting up here. There's no one in this building that doesn't care deeply about it. And just food for thought to remember, each and every day, the superintendent and the school board have a responsibility of over 43,000 of our young people in this county. And remember, I love our private schools as well. They provide a good workforce as well. There's about 10,000 of our youth that are in the public schools. We got great public schools. I mean, great private schools, so I'm very proud of that as well. But in the public schools, let's always remember, because they are public, and the 43,000 of your young people that are there, whatever happens on that campus is going to make news, right? If it happens on a private school, you're not going to know about it. So let's be very, very supportive and be better ambassadors for our school system, so you don't make the choices so difficult for our commissioners, our school boards, and some of us in elected positions to get behind the school system. There is a wrongful perception out there about our school system, about how poorly we perform. It's just not true. You know, we have a lot of success stories, and we have a lot of perfect scores on ACT testing and things of that nature. So I want to make sure, regardless of how anybody feels about this this particular issue, that, you know, let's go out in the community and talk about the good things that are going on in our schools and start promoting the good things, and remember the discernible difference between public and private schools. Thank you to each and every one that's been here throughout the history of the Signal Mountain Schools, going all the way back to the Thrasher Elementary was the first school that was up here, to all the people that were involved there that made it what it is in this community now, that put such an emphasis you know, you got a really good thing in this community, because people really would wish that this was true in all 576 square miles of Hamilton County, that people and parents and grandparents and people would be as engaged in their young people's lives as what you are here. So thank you for coming out, and God bless each and every one of you and each and every one of our students. And a very special thank you to Superintendent that's just now, he's still drinking from the fire hose, right? And he comes out to a situation that we have him where he doesn't know what to anticipate. But thank you again, Dr. Johnson, and I really look forward to continuing working.